Here we are. The 2019 football season is over. EA Tiburon, Canuck Play, and Axis Games are all probably hard at work planning and designing their 2020 football games. It really is probably time for wish lists and feature suggestion videos, but unfortunately here I am still trying to finish up my critiques of the 2019 indie games. So, at long last, here it is, my final planned critique for the 2019 indie football games. If you haven't watched the critiques of the Dynasty and Franchise modes, or the gameplay critique covering offense and defense, then I suggest that you check those out before you continue watching this video. My YouTube channel is still very young, and very subject to being shaped by my audience. If you like these videos about the indie football games, and you want to see more videos like these, then be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and please do share these videos with your friends or on social media. You can also check out my personal blog and Patreon page if you wish to support the creation of further content. Where I go from here will largely be up to viewers like you. I currently only have 3 patrons, all of whom are supporting me for my Civilization content and strategies. My sincere thanks to them for their support, and don't worry, you'll be seeing some new Civ content real soon. If these football videos earn me even just a single new patron, I mean, that's like a 25% increase in patrons. And you can bet I'll put greater priority on creating further content along these lines. In fact, I listed several possible future topics in the previous video, all of which are things that I would like to do if I can find the time to do them. You can still vote in the comments or on the poll on Patreon if you want to see one of those videos, and there is still an outside chance that I might get around to being able to making it this spring or summer. And if I do get patron support, you bet it's going to jump a lot higher in my priority list. And if I'm not able to get to it before the summer, then I'll definitely try to make a video on the winning topic following the release of the slate of 2020 football games in the fall. At the risk of tooting my own horn, I also want to point out that your support won't just be shaping my future content. It might also help to shape the future of these very games that I'm talking about. Canuck Play and Axis Games are both small, independent studios, and they actually do listen to the feedback from their players. I know for a fact that someone at Canuck's team saw that first video about Maximum 2019's Dynasty mode because he responded to a tweet about the topic, specifically telling me that one of the problems that I brought up had been addressed by a patch. Specifically, Canuck changed the logic for determining the close-to-home pitch in the Dynasty mode. I had, in my video critique, complained that prospects from every state, even neighboring states from the school that I'd created in Las Vegas, were being rated as having low closeness to home. This made it difficult to recruit high-ranked recruits because I had honestly nothing to offer them compared to the bigger, better schools, which, might have been halfway across the country from the prospect's home. So, thanks Canuck for addressing that. Unfortunately, I have to begrudgingly report that I am now having almost the exact opposite problem. Since that patch, the close-to-home pitch is now being rated as good for every single prospect in the game, even the ones who are across the country. And I even booted up a fresh Dynasty with a different team just to verify that it wasn't a compatibility bug with my existing Dynasty file. Nope, same issue in the brand new Dynasty that I'd created from scratch. Are other players having this issue as well? In any case, I'm still hopeful that Canuck will put out another patch to fix this issue. Now I just wish that somebody at Access would watch that video so they can maybe fix that bug that's causing my coach's win-loss record to be tallied incorrectly. Anyway, enough of the shameless self-promotion. It's time to talk once more about Maximum Football 2019 and Axis Football 2019. Something interesting that I've been noticing as I've been playing more of Maximum Football 2019 since having written my original review on my personal blog is that I am finding myself very impressed by just how long the field feels. Bear with me on this. I'll explain. Moving down the field in a sustained drive is surprisingly difficult in Maximum Football, so long as you are not able to take advantage of a complete coverage breakdown and connect on a long pass play. which, as I've said before, happens too often for my liking. The defense pursues to stop the run fairly well, and long runs usually do feel earned, unlike in Axis. Maximum Football rewards good play calling and patience in the backfield. More importantly, however, is that many of the game's pass routes run relatively shallow compared to other football video games, including Axis. And yeah, I think that's actually a really good thing. Most passing routes in real football are not run very deep. Go ahead, watch an NFL football game and pay attention to how many pass routes are thrown and completed inside of the first down marker, or even behind the line of scrimmage. Seriously, watch the New England Patriots or the Oakland Raiders in 2019 to see what I mean. Madden, in particular, has struggled with its pacing because so many of its routes are run at or beyond 10 yards. If you keep completing passes in Madden, you will keep getting first downs, and you will almost certainly score. Or you'll get 2 or 3 incompletions and go 3 and out. As such, drives in Madden often feel very all or nothing. There's very little in between, and teams rarely put together 5 or 6 play drives that stall around midfield and lead to punts or long field goals. Almost every drive in Madden feels like it's either 3 and out or it's a score. Even drag routes in Madden that get caught 3 or 4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage result in the receiver gaining 8, 9, or 10 or more yards after the catch due to the poor pass coverage and pursuit. Even with a dink and dunk play design, it's still relatively easy to get 10 or more yards in almost every passing play that you run in Madden. Maximum does not have this problem. Both my team and the CPU teams are regularly putting together 6 or 7 play drives that still grind to a halt and result in a punt from somewhere around midfield in between the 40-yard lines. A large part of this is due to how shallow the passing routes are run. Quick routes like outs, ins, and hitches are routinely run at 3 or 4 yards, and defenses converge on them fairly quickly to limit the gain after the catch. Relying on dink and dunk strategies will mean you'll be looking at a lot of third down and short situations in a given drive, and failing to convert one of those third and shorts will likely mean a punt. Because of the quick convergence of the defense and the shallow nature of many pass routes, field position really does feel like it matters in maximum football. Converting third downs and sustaining drives is really important. Big plays really do feel like big plays, and that 80 yards or so between you and the end zone genuinely feels like an intimidating distance. This is definitely not true in Axis. Many pass routes are easy to complete beyond 10 yards, and getting behind the defense for a long bomb is far too easy due to the poor safety play. But it's also very easy in Axis to rip off long, uncontested runs. Receivers and tight ends, as I said before, are a bit too good at blocking on the edge and downfield, resulting in linebackers and safeties being locked down by blockers with no chance of getting to the runner. Runs around the perimeter are therefore far too easy to execute, and also far too difficult to defend. This definitely means that my running game is very efficient. Hooray! But I rarely feel like I'm earning my success on the ground in Axis football.
And he's in for the score!
And there was much rejoicing.
The most underdeveloped area of both games is, unsurprisingly, special teams. Now, to be fair, special teams is almost always the last area of a football game to get any significant attention and or mechanical complexity. EA hardly touched Madden special teams mechanics between 2009 and 2016 when Madden 17 finally received a long overdue special teams overhaul and being, in my opinion, the most well-rounded and complete release in modern Madden history. But even then, the new mechanics, such as jumping the snap to block kicks, feel scripted and not very organic or realistic.
Now this is the blocked kick. Notice where the kicker is. This is the good kick that we had watched before. The ball's in the same position. Look at where the kicker is in his movement.
And there's still no ratings that determine who is a good long snapper, and no risk of a botched snap or bad hold, even though the long snapper position has been on the depth charts for over 10 years. Both Maximum and Axis have very bare-bones support for special teams in 2019. Kickoffs, punts, and field goals are all there, and they're all functional, even though they are often the most buggy parts of the game and they lack a lot of real depth or strategy. Axis has several variations of punt and punt block packages, but no fake punts or fake field goals. It also has onside kicks in the playbooks, but they have the same problem that have plagued onside kicks in Madden for as long as I can remember, which is that there's no feedback on how to properly kick the ball to get that fancy onside bounce. And even if there were, it wouldn't matter because the ball will just magnetically attach to the first player on the receiving team that gets anywhere near it.
Question. And the receiving team will safely fall on the ball.
Players don't jump up to high point the ball mid-bounce. There's no scrum or pile-up. Nobody ever even muffs the recovery or has it jarred loose by a hit. Onside kicks are in the game, but they might as well not be. Heck, even though Maximum doesn't actually implement onside kicks, I actually feel like I'd have better chances to recover one if I just tried kicking the ball as short and as weakly as I possibly can. One of the big new features of Maximum this year was the addition of a fair catch button. It doesn't work very well, and I've actually found it pretty much pointless to use. I've only ever seen a punt muffed once in my entire playtime with the game, and that happened to occur after I had called for a fair catch. I think what happened was the ball hit my player as he was waving the fair catch signal, and so he dropped the ball. Wonderful. I don't even bother calling for fair catches since there's virtually zero risk of fumbling anyway, and the upside of getting a few extra yards before the coverage team gets to you is worth that virtually zero risk. Both games' kickers are also terrible at making field goals. Axis's kickers routinely kick wide right or wide left, even though they've always got plenty of leg, and Maximum's kickers often fail to put enough power into the kick. I don't know, maybe the CPU kickers in Maximum could benefit from watching my video tutorial for kicking in Maximum Football 2019. I do want to re-emphasize a small point that I made in the kick tutorial for Maximum Football 2019, which is that I actually like that the kick trajectory defaults to that low line drive that isn't good for much of anything more than an extra point. This means that you actually do have to aim every single kick, except maybe for those aforementioned extra points. You can't just kick the ball without aiming and expect the kick to be good, like you can in Madden. It's a very small change that makes kicking much less automatic and a bit more challenging, especially if you're under the pressure of an expiring play clock or game clock. The weird wind mechanic in Maximum doesn't help. I mean, 3 miles an hour doesn't sound like much, but this gentle breeze is somehow enough to wildly disrupt the kicking game. Kicking into a 3-mile-per-hour breeze in Maximum makes the difference between a kickoff landing on the 25-yard line or sailing out the back of the end zone. I can't help but wonder if the wind is actually blowing 20 or 30 miles per hour, but that the UI is just bugged and always shows 3. In general, special teams in both games feels rote and unengaging. There's no fakes or trick plays for you to make devious schemes around or to have to worry about the other team using.
Field by Knox, a total deke by Devin Hester.
There's no reverse returns or designed hook and ladder returns for those last-second acts of desperation when you're down by a few points.
25, pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's got
40,
something.
50,
He's got it.
40,
He's got it.
20, 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle.
Harmon will probably try to squib it, and he does. Ball comes loose, and the Bears have to get out of bounds. Rodgers along the sideline, another one. They're still in deep trouble at midfield. They tried to do a couple of... The ball is still loose as they get it to Rodgers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. He's going into the end of the Bears. The Bears have won. The Bears have won. Oh, my God. The most amazing, sensational.
Kickers and punters get the ball off so quickly that I feel confident in saying that it is physically impossible to block a punter field goal in either of these games. And just like in Madden, there's no mechanics for bad snaps or bobbled holds, nor are there accompanying player attributes that make a player a good long snapper or holder, which of course means that that's one less thing to consider when you're deciding on who to cut and who to keep on your active roster in the Dynasty or franchise modes. Playing in Axis, I don't have to decide between keeping a specialist long snapper as my 53rd player or holding on to a rookie backup running back. And in Maximum, I don't have to decide whether or not to redshirt that freshman who's not a very good lineman, but would make a great long snapper at the cost of him losing out on that extra year of eligibility to improve his actual offensive line rating. I did mention in the last video about the Dynasty and franchise modes that I love that Maximum lets you set your lineup for all special teams units. That's awesome. I wish both Axis and Madden did that. But unfortunately, the mechanics just aren't deep enough to make it worth wading through the abysmal depth chart UI. And even so, the game doesn't have a depth chart in the pause menu of the actual football games, nor are formation subs available for special teams plays. So if I wanted to make a special teams change-up mid-game or at halftime, I simply can't. Both of these games also have significant issues with either not knowing certain football rules, not properly implementing those rules, or having bugs with certain rules. Maximum is in this precarious position of trying to support 3 different rule sets for 3 different variations of gridiron football. Canadian, NFL, and college football all have different rules, not to mention different play schemes and strategies. I understand why Canuck Play would want to do this from a marketing and advertising standpoint. They're trying to reach as broad an audience as possible. They want Maximum Football to live up to its namesake by providing the maximum amount of football possible and having game modes for all football fans, whether you're into NFL football, college football, or Canadian football. That's a laudable goal, and we should admire Canuck for wanting to do that. No matter what brand of football you prefer, Maximum Football has something for you. Unless, of course, you like arena football. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if next year, Canuck even includes the new XFL rule set. There actually are some pretty interesting rule changes in the XFL that I think would be very fun to play around and experiment with in a video game. And honestly, I'm really disappointed that the XFL did not license their brand out to someone like 2K to make an XFL video game. I think they missed a golden opportunity. Of course, the obvious and inevitable downside to that design philosophy is that Canuck, with its limited manpower and resources, then has to actually go and implement those varying rules. Not to mention their associated play concepts, and implement an AI that knows how to use the appropriate strategies for each rule set, and then also designing game modes such as the Dynasty, Season, and maybe eventually a franchise mode that's appropriate to each set of rules. That's a lot of extra overhead that Canuck is putting, perhaps unnecessarily, on its back. And it creates a lot of opportunities for the introduction of bugs, glitches, and other problems with how the rules work. One such rule difference is clock stoppages, and Maximum gets some of its clock stoppages just flat out wrong. In the vanilla release of the game, in the college rules, the game would correctly stop the clock after a first down, but it would fail to restart the clock again after the ball is reset. This drags the pace of the game down to a crawl because the clock stops for every single first down. There's no accelerated clock in that game either, and a game with 10-minute quarters will easily drag on for 90 minutes or more. 7 or 8-minute quarters would probably feel a lot more comfortable even with these incorrect rules, but the game only offers 5, 10, or 15 as options. 5 is way too short, and 10 drags on too long. The excessive clock stoppages also makes hurry-up offenses too easy to execute, and it makes it tedious to run out the clock. This was fixed in a content update in November, and the clock will now resume after the game leaves the play call screen following a first down. So, again, kudos to Maximum for its outstanding post-release support of the game. Not only are they adding new play concepts, but they're also fixing bugs and other design issues. It's not perfect, because it's not restarting the clock after the ball is set, but it's at least a better compromise than the way that it was working in its vanilla release. On the other end of the spectrum, if a punt goes out of bounds in Maximum Football, the clock does not stop at all. I actually lost a game once because I let a CPU punt bounce out of bounds instead of fielding it because I thought that would conserve a few seconds to give me an opportunity to try out a Hail Mary. Unfortunately for me, the clock kept running despite the change in possession, and I didn't even get to run a play. More generally, game pacing has been a significant problem in football games in general since the inception of football video gaming. The invention of the accelerated clock feature in the late 2000s, I think, has been one of the single best ideas ever put into a football game, as it simulates the time it takes to huddle up and call a play.
He throws one past the first down marker. The home team sets up for a tough field goal. Hoffman kicks it up. It's good. They convert from 50 yards out. The home team, that will do it for the second quarter. The Outlaws with the edge so far, 17-13.
It balances time of possession between the human and CPU teams, and it allows for 15-minute quarter games to be played in a 60 to 90-minute time frame. Less than half the length of a real NFL or NCAA football game. Axis features an accelerated clock that makes a 15-minute quarter game playable in well under an hour, but Maximum unfortunately lacks any such feature. As such, even though Maximum physics and animation leads to a better pace of play on the field, 15-minute quarter games tend to drag on due to the CPU not running any time off the game clock during its huddles. This is particularly odd to me since Maximum defaults to a 15-minute quarters, and it locks its trophies and achievements behind that 15-minute quarter setting. So 15-minute quarters definitely seems to be the intended length of the game, but without an accelerated clock, the pacing is just way too slow. Even at 10 minutes, the game sometimes drags on, and I'm still running far more plays than other teams in simulated Dynasty games. An accelerated clock feature is therefore one of my top wishlist features for Maximum 2020. Axis Football 19 may have even more egregious rules issues, however. The most glaring rules inaccuracy in that game is the completely nonsensical overtime rules. The way that overtime works in Axis is that it adds 1 minute to the game clock for overtime continuously until one team or the other is winning when that clock hits 0. There's no coin toss or kickoff either. Play simply resumes right where it left off at the end of the fourth quarter. This isn't NFL sudden death. It's not the NFL's hybrid sudden death. It's not the college, both teams get the ball on the 25-yard line rule. This is not recognizable as any form of football overtime that I'm familiar with. Personally, I'd rather that the game just end in a tie instead of having to play this abysmally nonsensical overtime.
Well, I've never been a part of a tie. Never even knew that was in the rule book. But again, it's part of the rules and we have to go with it. So
perhaps the most exploitable rules error in Axis is that Axis Football 2019 does not enforce a penalty for kicking a kickoff out of bounds. You can coffin corner every single kickoff to pin the opposing offense deep in their territory if you want. The CPU does not know this rule, so they never take advantage of the rule omission, which means they'll do normal kickoffs to you, but you can kick the ball out of bounds at the 5-yard line against them every time if you want. Getting the rules of football right should be another top priority for both of these games in 2020 if they want consumers to take them seriously as real contenders in the football video game marketplace. Yes, there's also bugs on both games. Some are pretty serious ones, in fact. I've had several soft locks in Maximum in particular, which forced me to have to exit to my PS4's home screen and restart the game. Thankfully, Maximum autosaves after every play, so I didn't lose any progress. Hooray for small favors. The worst bug that I've encountered in Axis involves my coach's win-loss record being incorrect. After I finish playing a game and I return to the franchise dashboard, Axis, for whatever reason, is swapping all of my coach's win-loss records with the win-loss record of the worst team in the league. If I simulate the game, the win-loss record seems to be tallied correctly. I'm not sure if this bug will affect anything long-term, I don't know if it's going to affect coach progression or player progression or anything like that, but I would definitely like to see it fixed either way. I don't want to spend all day nitpicking these sorts of glitches. I would definitely like to see them addressed, but I'm more focused on the consistent problems and flaws in the design of the game, of which there are enough for me to make an entire video. As I said in the opening of the first video, Maximum Football 2019 to me feels like the most improved of the two games since last year's release. But that being said, Axis Football 19 is, I think, the better and more playable game overall. I'm not sure if a College Dynasty was the right move for Canuck to have taken with its Maximum Football game. I feel like Canuck is trying to do too much with their limited resources. Maximum Football 2018 felt like a half-finished Canadian football game, and instead of going back and finishing that Canadian football game for Maximum Football 2019, Canuck stapled a half-finished college football game onto that half-finished Canadian football game. This was most apparent with the play design. The 11-man play designs were pretty much all just the same thing as the 12-man play designs from Canadian football, with just the 12th player removed. And 2019 did add a bunch of actual 11-man formations and schemes at release, and to Canucks' credit, they're continuing to update the game fairly regularly. There have already been patches that have introduced an AI slider set to customize game difficulty, patches to fix deep pass coverage, and a patch that will add additional formations and schemes, including a much-needed nickel defense to stop 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. So, no, Maximum Football 2019 is still not a complete product, at least not in my opinion, regardless of its new Dynasty mode. It is still very much a work in progress. Axis Football 19, on the other hand, actually does feel close to being a complete product. It still feels like it's at a PlayStation 1 level of gameplay design and complexity, but it is at least a complete game. Problems and lack of polish aside, I sure as heck played a hell of a lot more of these two games than I did of Madden in 2019. In fact, I actually made it through multiple seasons in both Maximum's Dynasty and Axis's franchise, which is something that I haven't done with a Madden release since, I don't even recall.